Okay, Mid-Penn Bank Podcast, episode number 35, right, Scott? But it's really 33. We're gonna have to go through this a few months, a few times, where we explain that it's actually the 35th episode, but that's because we re-aired 2 episodes.
Yep, two of our best.
So it's the 33rd recording.
Correct.
Right? And this is going to be the second half of the Dave La Torre podcast that we recorded a couple weeks ago, and I think it was a total of a little over 2 hours. So we split it up in 2 one-hour segments. The first one we put out a couple weeks ago, and this one is being put out now. And in this particular portion of the conversation, so the first hour was more me asking Dave questions, and in the second hour, it's a little bit more of him asking me questions, and with the intention of trying to give, some people in the viewing audience have asked to, find out a little bit more about my story. And I think that Dave did a pretty decent job, asking a few kind of open-ended questions and a little bit about my time here at Mid-Penn and prior to. So I hope you all enjoy this. I think that it was a really good, compelling 2-hour segment. I thought the first hour was really good, and I think that the second hour is equally as good. So please enjoy the second half of the conversation between Dave La Torre and myself.
Okay, gang, welcome in. As you can tell, this is not Rory Retrieve speaking right now. This is Dave La Torre. I host a radio show on WHP 580, La Torre Live. One of the fun things I get to do from time to time is have great conversations with Rory, whether it's on my radio show or on this platform here, the Mid-Penn Bank Podcast. Dazzling studio here, Rory, and
yeah,
you guys are doing it right.
Yeah, the guys did a really good job. I think we got a few more tweaks to go, but I'm very happy with it.
It's as professional as I've seen anywhere, so kudos to you guys. I think the show's very entertaining, fun to watch, and informative. And I tell people about it all the time. I think you guys do great work.
Thanks.
You really do.
It means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we've known each other for a long time. You've been on my radio show a few times, now the podcast. And when we talked about doing this, a thought jumped into my mind, and that for my first question, and that first question is, what the hell were you thinking when you hiked across the Grand Canyon?
Yeah, so I went out to California with a bunch of college friends.
Right.
You know Paul Navarro, I think.
Of course,
So Paul was there with his wife.
Right.
And Chris Jolly was there with his wife, and we were visiting Joe Alo and his wife. So,
nice.
4 college friends and their wives. And one of the days we were out there, we went into the mountains, did a 5-mile hike. So he lives in the La Quinta area.
Beautiful.
So we go into the mountains, do a 5-mile hike. And that was probably only the second time I had ever done a hike in my life.
No kidding.
And when we got done that night, we're standing around his pool having dinner, and I said, that was fun. Like, that was a good hike, and I need to do something to start getting back into shape. So maybe I'll go back and hike more. And Chris Jolly says, well, there's a hike at the Grand Canyon. It's called the Rim to Rim. I'm like, well, what's that? He goes, you start on one rim and you hike over the other rim. And I said, well, like, how many miles is that? And he said, it's 20 something. And I said, like, how long do you think that would take? And he said, I think it takes about 12 or 13 hours.
Right now, your mind's going right now.
And yeah, so, and I said, well, I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I've always wanted to go to the Grand Canyon. I said, let's do it. Let's do the Rim to Rim. And he said, all right, well, probably do it in the fall.
Right.
I said, great, let's do it in October. Let's do it right around my 61st birthday.
Perfect.
So we get back, and a few weeks later, I contacted him, and I said, are you setting that up? And by the time he got around to setting it up, he got it in early September. And the issue is you've got to get rooms to stay at on the North Rim. So there's only one hotel on the North Rim. It's like these cabins.
Sure.
And they're, because there's so few of them, it's tough to get reservations. So we got it for, we stayed there the night of September 4th.
Is that the starting point for you or the ending point?
The starting point. Now, you could do it either way. You can go south to north or north to south. We decided to do north to south because, and I think it was the smart thing to do, from the canyon floor to the top of the north rim is 8,500 feet of elevation.
Wow.
From the canyon floor to the top of the south rim, it's like 6,500.
Gotcha.
So for it being our first time, we thought maybe we'd take the easier way so that at the end you're only going up 6,500 instead of 8,500.
You're going one way too.
Yeah.
What happens at the end there? Just hop in an Uber?
No. So we and our wives drove from his house. He lives in Scottsdale area.
Gotcha.
So we drive the 2.5 hours, whatever it is, to the south rim.
Right.
And we get on a shuttle. He and I get on a shuttle. The women stay.
Right.
And that shuttle's 4 hours.
Wow.
To get over to the north rim.
Wow.
Meanwhile, they checked into a hotel that night on the south
rim.
They're
hanging out.
Yeah. So we get a restless night's sleep in these cabins, these really rustic cabins on the north rim.
Right.
We get up at like 2:45. We get on a shuttle at 3 o'clock that takes us to the trailhead.
Right.
And then we commence the hike middle of the night. And it took us 14 hours.
Wow.
To get over to the south rim.
Do you remember how many states you went through? Is it only one state?
I think it's all in Arizona.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
There's parts of the Grand Canyon that are in other states, but I think this whole thing is in Arizona.
Are one of those events like people say, it's a real life-changing event for me. Was it for you?
I wouldn't say life-changing, but it did give me a really good perspective. I love challenging, things that are challenges. I did 14
used to run
marathons.
A lot of races. Yeah, that's right.
14 marathons, 16 half marathons, so on and so forth. And that has been over for me for over 6 years. So this was an opportunity to, I'm an old guy now, over 60.
My goodness.
And I wanted to, something that could challenge me physically because, this job is mentally straining.
Sure.
You have to put a lot of mental energy into this job. So, but you can't forget about you need to stay physically fit too.
Right.
Because the schedule that I keep throughout the year is really tasking. So I thought that was a good opportunity. I kind of slipped with my physical health for a couple of years. And that was I lost a lot of weight. I, improved my muscle content. I was going to the gym a few days a week. I'm hiking a few days a week. And it was just a really good overall, not because of the beauty of seeing the canyon, which is beautiful, by the way.
Right.
But when we got up to that south rim and it was like all the stress and strain and you don't know if you're going to be able to do it until you finish it. I didn't know I was going to be able to finish it until I walked across, that final trailhead.
Are you somebody now who needs a goal to exercise?
Yes.
You have to work towards something.
Yes.
It's not like a lifestyle.
No, I before, on January 1st, if not December 31st of every year, I map out my whole month or my whole year of how many push-ups do I want to do? How many times do I want to go to the gym? How much do I want to walk? How much do I want to run? And I got to keep track of that. Like that's the only way I can stay fit throughout the year. And they're not the only goals I set.
Right.
I set other goals. How many books I want to read. How many times I want to take my daughters out on daddy-daughter dates. How many times I want to go out with my wife on a date. So it's a whole bunch of
So you're a big goal-setting guy.
Absolutely.
Where does that come from, do you think?
I don't know. Because I wasn't always that way.
Right.
But at some point when you're juggling a family and work and trying to stay healthy,
right.
It got down to, and I don't remember when it was, what year it was, but I was like, I think I got to start setting short-term goals over each year by month so that I can stay on task.
That's how you hold yourself accountable.
Absolutely. And by the way, at the end of the year, I keep everything in a notebook.
Oh, you do?
And at the end of the year, I say, okay, how many of those goals did I meet? How many of those goals did I meet? How many of those? And if I don't do at least 50% of all the goals that I set, and when you add up all the different categories, family goals, professional goals, health goals, exercise goals, it's probably 50 or so goals.
There's an app for that, Rory.
I know. I knew it. But I have all those. at the end of the year, I
Right.
take them out, I calculate it, put it in a drawer. And that goes
You
back.
check it off as you go, or you just go back and look at it?
So I keep track by month. So like if
Interesting.
I want to go to the gym, 100 times a year, I've got to do, 8 or 9 times a month.
Right.
And at the end of each month, I put it in the book.
What's your favorite thing to do when it comes to physical activity?
Oh, I love lifting weights.
Me too.
Oh man, I love lifting
People
weights.
don't understand it.
Yeah, and I'm not. I go to the gym. I have a really efficient time.
Yep.
Give me 45 minutes,
Yep.
and
that's
I
it.
will have a workout that'll knock most people out.
People don't understand how important. You're 61. I'm 54. People don't understand how important
Yeah,
muscle is at our age.
it's in my opinion, it's the most important thing.
Agreed.
It's
Not cardio.
It's better than doing cardio.
Yes.
If you increase your muscle mass,
Right.
everything else takes care of itself.
All I used to do was run.
Mhm.
And then I stopped lifting weights for a long time. And it didn't really help. And you felt broken down a
Right.
lot because of all the pressure. Now lifting weights and walking has kind of rejuvenated me.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you have to get up, you have to get dressed, you have to go to the gym,
Right.
to work out.
Gotta do it.
Unfortunately, don't have it in my house. It's cold. You don't want to
Me
do it.
too.
It's 5
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning, whatever. But when you get there, get that done, and now you're on your way home, you're just like, the rest of the day.
It's the best feeling in the
The
world.
rest of the day's gonna be easy.
There's nothing harder,
Yeah.
right? There's nothing harder that you will do, Roy Retrieve,
Right.
CEO of Mid-Penn Bank. There's nothing harder than going at it in the weight room
Yeah.
while everybody else is asleep,
Right. And you kind of did get that same thing with when I was running.
right?
So I was running more than I was lifting at that time.
Right.
And, getting up in the morning, because I'd get up at like 3:30 in the morning and go run 10, 15 miles before work.
Right.
And, that also was it gave you great energy for the day.
Sure.
But, my wife was complaining the whole time. Hey, you look
You'd have to
sickly.
go to bed early too. I mean, your
I was-
lifestyle's very
I used
limited.
to have a rule.
Yeah.
Nothing good happens after 9 o'clock. So I was in bed by 9 o'clock every night. Now,
Well said. One of the things I wanted to ask you, I remember you from, I knew the name, but I first remember you from Commerce Bank. I remember you coming and having a meeting when I was president of the Harrisburg Young Professionals, and you came and gave a speech to us. And you really left an impression on me because I'm like, here's a guy that's really with it together, knows what he wants. It was a few years before you did Mid-Penn Bank. And I guess I'm wondering, how does that start for you? How does a guy like you say, I'm going into the banking industry and I'm going to make a living doing that? Where does that come from?
And Scott's heard this story a bunch of times. So I went to Pitt to be a dentist. Right?
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So and by the way, the reason was I grew up in a very poor environment. My parents were divorced. My dad was a Greyhound bus driver. He was supporting another family. Mom had 6 kids, stay at home.
Right.
So, we were below the poverty line.
Right.
And I didn't like being below the poverty line. So around the time that I was a freshman in high school or whatever, I'm reading Money Magazine. I'm reading, like I was
Right.
a weird kid.
Right. I get it.
And I read an article about the top paying professions. And the number one top paying profession at that time, dentist. So I'm like,
Seriously.
then that's what I'm going to do. So I went out to Pitt to be a dentist, and then I ran into
They
organic
have a great
chemistry.
dental school, by the way.
They have a great dental school.
Great dental school.
And more importantly, they had a great football team.
They sure did when you were there.
So it was like, it worked out really well. My good friend Hugh Green and Ricky Jackson,
Right.
they were guys that I went to Pitt because I loved watching those guys play over those previous few years. So I get out there and then I I meet organic chemistry, and I'm no longer going to be a dentist because
Really?
organic chemistry. Now, I didn't probably pay enough attention to it. Wasn't serious
Ain't
enough
easy,
about
right?
it.
Ain't easy.
But I remember taking the organic chemistry final and thinking, I'm not going to be a dentist.
Right.
This just
Yeah.
isn't for me.
Yeah.
So I switched my major to economics, and I was a much better economics student than I was
Why economics, though? Why
because
economics?
a good friend of mine at the time, because I was considering dropping out of college.
Sure.
And he said, look, you can't drop out of college. And I said,
Right.
well, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to switch my major to? He said, economics. I'm like, what? I don't even know what that is.
Literally, that's how it happened.
Yeah. So I switched to economics, and I understood it really well, got straight A's. And now it's, graduation time. I have no idea what I'm going to do.
Interesting.
So I'm, they're doing the on-campus interviews. I'm signing up for this and that. I have no idea.
Right.
And, with an economics degree, it only prepares you to do two things. Get an advanced degree in economics, which I didn't have any money for.
Right.
Or just go start working. So I'm in the library. It's the second semester. It's after January. And everyone's getting, I got a job. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And there was a guy, his name was Vic.
Vic. Okay.
And I knew he was an economics major because I saw him in a lot of my classes. And I knew him by first name. But that's really it.
Right.
So I'm on the fourth floor of Hillman Library one night, and there's Vic. So I went over to him and I said, hey, man, what are you going to do when you graduate? He said, I'm going into banking. And I said, now at that time, I had an account in the bank, Harris Savings and Loan. I had that for, 10 years.
Sure.
Because I've been working since I was 8 years old.
Right.
And I said, so like the only thing I knew about a bank was there were these people called tellers. You went and gave them your money and passbook, and they stamped it and gave it back to you.
Right.
I said, what, are you going to be like a teller? And he said, no, I'm going to be a credit analyst. I said, what's a credit analyst? He said, well, you analyze financial statements and, ultimately to become a commercial lender. I said, what's a commercial lender? He said, well, you make loans to businesses. You go out and evaluate businesses and make loans. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. So
Vic was your inspiration?
Yeah. So I applied to one bank in Pittsburgh, and I got a job offer.
Let me guess, PNC Bank?
No, it wasn't PNC. It was because PNC wasn't PNC then.
Gotcha.
PNC was still Pittsburgh National Bank.
Oh, gotcha.
And it was not Integra Bank. I never remember the name of the bank, but
all right, no biggie.
So they make this job offer to me on a Friday.
Right.
I go and for the last interview, lady offers me the job. It's to go into a commercial loan trading program, just like Vic said.
Right.
And I get home that night, I'm watching the news, and there's an article in the news about that bank laying off like 15% of its workforce earlier that day.
Whoa.
So Monday came, because no cell phones at the time.
Right.
And I called the woman who had interviewed me and offered me the job, and I said, I saw that news thing Friday afternoon. Like, is my job offer still good? And she said, no, I lost my job.
Oh, no.
You're out. So I came back to Harrisburg. I wrote letters to every bank in Harrisburg, and I ended up with Hamilton Bank.
That's what you did back then, too. Like you wrote letters and you sent packets out with resumes, and then you tried to follow up with phone calls and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And yours led to Hamilton Bank.
Hamilton Bank, which was part of Core States, which had one of the best commercial loan training programs in the country. And
stroke of good fortune for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You need a little luck along the way.
But I didn't like it. Like
really?
I did 2 years. It was supposed to be a 2 to 3 year program. I did 2 years. I didn't like it at all.
Huh.
I didn't like it because, like I remember walking into buildings and like there's the commercial loan group over there. Well, what's that group over there? That's the retail side. We don't mess around with them. And I don't think I was real good at it. And I just didn't like the way that they handled the trainees. They made us feel like second-class citizens. They would always say, oh, you're non-productive assets. And I'm like, I don't feel like a non-productive asset.
Yeah.
Like
Why would you
I'm
say
working,
that?
I'm doing stuff.
Yeah.
You're making money off of my work product one way or another.
Right.
And so I left, I moved to Colorado.
Oh.
And got my Series 7 license to sell stock.
No kidding.
And I was working for, the only way I could describe it is, do you remember the movie Boiler Room?
Oh, yes.
It was one of those.
One of those situations.
Yeah, so I'm out there for like 6 months, and I realized, no good. Came back to Harrisburg, and I mess around. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next, because I don't think I want to be in banking, because I didn't like that.
How old are you at this point?
So this is 1988, so I'm 25, 26 years old.
You're still young enough to fail.
Right.
Till you figure it out.
Right. And it was humiliating. I mean,
sure.
We've
all been there.
Yeah. I'm a college grad. I come back to Harrisburg. I get a job through a temp agency working at the IBM on Simpson Ferry Road.
No kidding.
I'm working 70 hours a week, making, whatever, $5 an hour. And I'm a busboy at the Hope Station.
Really, at Hope Station?
Hope Station,
downtown Harrisburg,
downtown
where
Second
they
Street.
ended up having
Just
the
because
firehouse?
I have rent to pay, I've got student loans to pay, I've got car payment to pay, I've got all this stuff to pay, and so I think I'm bartending, I'm working at Hope Station, I'm doing this stuff for IBM, and one night, the girl was my junior prom date,
Right.
Linda Barber.
Gotcha.
She and her family come in at Hope Station, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
I'm in here busting
And
tables.
I'm a bus boy. So I had to go bust a table, and it was an embarrassing thing. But so ultimately, I see an ad in the newspaper for a management training position with a bank called Pennsylvania National Bank.
No kidding.
So I applied for that. I get that. And that's how I get into and stay in banking. And it was a completely different company than Core States. And
First of all, it's shocking. People don't understand, like, you found jobs in newspaper ads back then.
Yes.
Like, that's where you found them.
that's right.
Like, people can't fathom that
There weren't
today because there's
recruiters.
Indeed and
Right.
LinkedIn
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
all
yeah.
these
It's like
things. Like,
all that stuff now.
you
yeah.
scoured the classified
You
ads
scoured
for
the
jobs.
classified ads.
And there were hundreds of them.
I saw management trainee.
Boom.
And I saw that it was a bank, and I was like, maybe I should just try it one more time. And David was just completely different the second time around.
Why was it? What was different this time?
Because that bank was a community bank
There you
versus
go.
Core States they were a big regional at the time.
They're a behemoth.
Yeah, behemoth.
Yeah.
And in that community bank where you got to meet the president of the bank,
Right.
now I had to go up to Pottsville. That's where the bank was headquartered. And ultimately I ended up working for them in Harrisburg. But it was just, it was a closer feel. Like
Right.
the employees did more things together. And I really enjoyed my time there. I was there for about 10 and a half years, rose up through the ranks, so to speak, became a regional leader for the company. The company was not making good decisions. And right after I got out of law school, the guy at Commerce Bank at the time, Jim Gibson, was recruiting me to come over there as
No
his
kidding.
chief lending officer. And I really didn't want to leave. It was Keystone Financial was the company.
Sure.
I didn't want to leave there because I really enjoyed my time there, and I met some really good people. But
You put time in there too.
yeah, put time in there. And I was there for 10 and a half years of my
Right,
life. And at
right.
that point, I'm only in
Right.
my early 30s. That's a third of my life.
That's right.
But the company, they were just making terrible decisions.
But your love of community banking, which
Started
obviously
there.
rings true today, it started there.
Right.
And it was all about the personal relationships.
Right.
You didn't feel like a number.
No.
Right. That's the difference.
Everything started with Pennsylvania National Bank, my love for this industry.
Right.
And so ultimately I take the job at Commerce. And
Commerce.
Commerce at the time, this is late 99. It's a $300 million bank.
Right.
And over the 9.5 years that I was there, we grew it to a $2.3 billion bank.
Wow.
And that was all organic growth, no acquisitions.
Right.
And, Scott will tell you, it was a high performing team. Like we built, like everyone knew, you came to work every day, French cuffs, silk tie, dressed
It
to
was
the nines.
legit.
And everyone was held accountable. And we just,
I remember when you guys opened that office in Techport, the
Yeah.
headquarters in Techport. Like that was like a statement.
right.
That was a statement for you guys at the time. I remember thinking, this is serious. Like these guys are serious
Right.
players. And it was fantastic.
So, but then, in 2008, they were talking about, so I was kind of the number two guy there.
Yeah. So explain to me, and that's when I met you as the number two guy. I'm like, this guy's intense.
Mm-hmm.
But I could tell I could tell like you were not going to be a number two guy. Yeah,
Well,
and not that I thought
yeah.
not that I was sitting there thinking like he's the number two guy. I remember thinking like this guy is going to run stuff
Yeah.
when I first met you. So then you get the Commerce. You're the number two guy. How does I don't know how you made the switch to Mid-Penn Bank.
So, again, if you talk to Scott or anyone that was at Commerce at the time, talk
Right.
to my wife, talk to my kids,
Right.
I was Commerce Bank. That was my whole life.
Right.
I freaking loved that company, and I gave it up everything I could. But by 2008, they were going in a different direction,
right.
and they wanted to merge with the ironically enough, Republic Bank down in Philadelphia.
Right.
They were going to merge with that bank.
Right.
And I wasn't fond of the guy that was pulling the strings on the other side of that. So meanwhile, Mid-Penn Bank had started. Now, and when I tell people this today, I don't think they believe me. I never thought I was going to be a CEO of a bank.
Really?
I never had an objective to be a CEO of a bank.
I say that all the time. Like, people are like, when did you know you were going to do what you did? And I'm like, never.
Yeah.
Never. It's
Not
circumstances compile
Right.
and put you in a position to all of a sudden one day you're like, I'm going to run a community bank.
And that's exactly what happened, because they had the Mid-Penn Bank had a separation with their previous CEO in October of 2008. They called me like within a couple of weeks and invited me to come in for an interview. And
How flattering is that?
I said, thank you, but no thank you.
Right, right.
Because I love my job.
Yeah.
And then a month later, I had another unsatisfactory run with the guy on the other side. And I thought, you know what, maybe I will go and talk to him. And so I went and talked to the Mid-Penn Bank board at the time. And it took about a month of interviews. And then they offered me the job. And then it took me another month to accept it. Because you
sat on it.
Yeah.
Really thought about it.
I just wasn't sure that it's what I wanted to do.
What were those conversations like at home? Like, who does Roy Retrieve go to when you've got this great offer?
Jody Retrieve.
You go to Jody Retrieve.
Yeah. So we were actually down in the Cayman Islands over the holidays of, between 2008 and 2009. And she's like, what are you going to do with this job? And I said, I just can't leave Commerce Bank. I love this bank, and I've worked so hard, and we've built such an incredible thing. And she said, you know what I think your problem is with this? I said, what? She said, you're in love with a company that doesn't exist anymore.
Interesting.
Because of what's going on with, the Philadelphia thing. And I was like,
she was dead on.
I was like, wow, you're right. You're right.
She was dead on.
So accepted the job.
That was your decision. That conversation really was a tipping point for you. That was it.
When we're sitting down at a restaurant down in the Cayman Islands. And so I take the job and I come to Mid-Penn. And Mid-Penn at the time was a $550 million bank.
Right.
With 14 locations, most of which were in Upper Dauphin County.
Right.
A few down around Harrisburg.
Not many.
A few over across the river.
Right.
2 across the river. And, I come in as a CEO, and the first thing I did is I read the Franklin Roosevelt book, The First 100 Days.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I've never been a CEO. I've never, I have no idea what I'm walking into. So I decided that in that first 100 days, I was going to use my eyes and ears and not my mouth. I wasn't going to tell anyone to do anything. I wasn't going to make any decisions. I was just going to go around, meet the employees, look at the locations, figure out how they were doing things. And then I was going to make decisions. And after that first 100 days, I got together with the board and I said, guys, we've got a lot of work to do here.
Right.
And it's not going to be fun work for a period of time, because we've got to cleanse the company from what it's been doing for the last 10 years and get it on an entirely different direction.
You had a lot of work to be done. So
I meet with the board.
Right.
And I said, look, here's my assessment. We've got a lot of problems. We've got a lot of things that we got to work on. It's not going to be fun. I'm probably going to have to move a lot of people out that including most of the senior management team and, most of the lenders and et cetera. And I said, and look, if you guys want to just shake hands and we'll call it, and I'll go figure out something else to do. But if you guys want to move forward with it, let's do it. And they were all 100% let's go.
Right away?
Absolutely.
Were they shocked when you gave them the lowdown?
I don't think they were. They were probably shocked to be a little too extreme, but they were surprised.
Right.
But they completely bought into my assessment of the company at the time. And, they brought me in there to effectuate change because they weren't happy with the way the company was growing. And really what I found out was the growth that they had in the 7-8 years before me getting there was not good.
Where was it at that time? How big of a bank was it? Do you recall?
$550 million in assets.
And today, 2024?
It's $5.5 billion.
Wow.
So we basically gone up 10 times. But
wow.
we couldn't do anything really substantial in the first 5 years. So I've been here almost 16 years. First 5 years were just fixing.
Catching up,
Yeah.
getting your heads above water.
And, so we really started to accelerate growth about 10 years ago.
Why does it take so long? Is it a matter of finding the right team members,
Yes,
getting
absolutely.
everything in place so that you can then go out and
Right.
achieve your goals?
Right. So, you said, was the conversation with Mrs. Retrieve, was that the thing that, and
Right.
it was. And by the way, a few months later, I'm going home to her and saying, don't ever talk me into something like that
What
again.
did you
because
make me
this,
do?
like, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be the guy that had to fix something,
Right.
I didn't come in with an idea that I got to get rid of everyone and bring in my own team.
Right.
That's not what I wanted to do. I just wanted to somehow get back on track of what we were doing at Commerce.
Right.
And I just realized that we couldn't do that without making some really tough decisions and changes. And, so those first 3-4 years, and by the way, I didn't bring anyone with me from Commerce. I brought one guy. I made one phone call to a guy named Scott Mickelwright, who was a young lender at Commerce, hired him out of college.
Right.
And I said, look, come over here and be a lender for me.
What a great hire.
And I said, I'm not promising you anything, but if you come over and work hard, you could become an executive.
And today he is?
He's the president of the Commercial and Consumer Bank and the chief revenue officer.
Wow.
And so he really helped me in that first year identify issues and fix the issues and start to change the culture. And so, Heather Hall,
Of course.
right? She's one of the best
Gem.
bankers I've ever met.
True pro.
Right? True pro. Maybe one of the best loan executives I've ever met. We couldn't have hired her back then. She
Right.
wouldn't have come to work for this
Good
this
point. That's a
company.
good point.
So by the time, it took a while to get the company in shape. And then we could go after someone like Heather. And we're very fortunate to have her even then. But, underneath the surface of all that, you're rebuilding the team with free agents, so to speak,
Sure.
was the commitment to the university, which Scott runs. And, we lost money my first year here
Okay.
in 2009. So I got
No
here.
surprise.
Got here in February. Well, it was a surprise to everyone else. But we had.
But you knew the task and you understood the challenges where you had a vision for it. And that's where you have to be dedicated to the vision because there's going to be bumps in the road.
Well, I should have realized after reading that book that there was going to be bumps in the road.
Right.
But I'm an
You don't think
eternal
of it that way.
optimist.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like I just want to. But before you go take the car for a drive, you got to pop open the hood and take a look at the engine and look at the oil and everything. And in doing that first year, we found out there were a lot of problems, mostly loan problems. So we had a lot of loan charge-offs, and we put a lot of money into the reserve, and therefore lost $2.8 million,
Right.
which was the company had been around 141 years before I got here.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the first loss they took since before the Great Depression.
Who is this guy they're thinking?
Right.
Like?
Well, all the old legacy shareholders in Millersburg, they wanted to hang me.
Right.
Not in effigy. I think in reality.
Like literally. Yeah.
So we had to suspend the dividend, and so 2010 was a brutal year. But when I submitted the budget in 2010, I told them we cut every trade association out. I cut every subscription out. I got rid of this. I got rid of that. I cut every expense, but there's one expense I need to double down on. And they said, what was that? And I said, educating our employees.
Right.
So we've got to invest more in educating our employees. And that was the concept of building the university. And so the formula since then has really been, if we can hire the right type of person,
Right.
and the right type of person to me, I don't care about anything other than you got to have three things: attitude, aptitude, and work ethic. A positive attitude, no matter what the circumstances are. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but you have to have an ability to learn stuff,
Right.
right? And you have to have a strong work ethic. And that doesn't mean you have to work 70 hours a week, but you have to be willing and able to do whatever is necessary to get your job done.
You work hard. You want
Yeah,
people to work hard too.
absolutely.
I mean, you do work hard. Like I
Absolutely.
can say as an outsider who somebody has known you for a while now, hard work is kind of like your thing.
Dave, that's been my thing since I was 8 years old, man.
I was
When
about
I
to
was
say,
selling grit newspapers.
is that little kid the one of 6 siblings? You think about that little kid. That's your motivational factor.
Absolutely. And I hated that situation. Not, I didn't hate my family or anything. I
Right.
hated the situation we were in so much that I said, I'm never going to let that happen to my family. And so, by the way, all my brothers,
Right.
most of them, they're all hardworking, very successful. My
Yeah.
oldest brother, Joe, my brother, Rick, my brother, Todd, my brother, Kevin, they're all incredibly hard workers and have done really well in life. Took a little bit of a different path than I did,
Sure.
but they're like that work ethic was just a Retrieve calling card.
Were you the youngest?
No, I
the
was
boys?
4th out of 6.
4th out of 6. So, but still, there were 3 older brothers, and it always helps to have older brothers. I think
Yeah.
growing up, like
Particularly my oldest kid. Again, parents were divorced.
right.
They
You're
got
fortunate
divorced when I was
have them.
2.
You're fortunate to have them.
And
your
that my
brothers.
oldest brother, Joe, was more like a young father to
Right.
me than an older brother. And he kind of set the stage for everyone, right?
Right.
He was the first one to, be 10, the first one to drive, the first one to do this, the first one to do that. And I modeled a lot of what I did after him. And
Right.
and he had an incredible work ethic, and he was really smart in school. And so, I was always like, if he could do it, I could do it.
Let me ask you a quick question before we get on to where you are now as a bank. What piece of advice would 61-year-old Roy Retrieve give Roy Retrieve just starting out as CEO of Mid-Penn Bank? If you could do it all over again, what piece of advice would you give that guy?
Yeah, so I think the thing that I lacked most when I became CEO here was like true vision, right? So I was just getting up every day, and I was just, as long as I did my job really well at Commerce, things just worked out well.
Just grind.
But at some point here, and it wasn't the first year, it wasn't the second year, at some point here, I started to see down the road further and see what this company could do if, we just continue to make good decisions. And, like every day,
Right.
make good decisions
Right.
and keep setting, more lofty objectives, that it can work out. I remember talking to employees and the board and saying, look, we're not trying to build the best bank in Millersburg. We're trying to build the best bank in central Pennsylvania. And at that time, people were like, what are you talking about, man? You're not going to be better than this bank or that bank. And somewhere around 2016 or 17, I stopped saying we're trying to build the best bank in central Pennsylvania because I think we already had it.
Right.
I started saying we're trying to build the best bank in Pennsylvania. And I remember people at that time saying,
Doubting
this
you
guy's got to
again.
be crazy. And now we have one of the best banks. I'm not saying we have the best one, but one of the best banks in Pennsylvania. And our objectives are more than that now.
Sure.
We want to have one of the best community banks in the Northeast. And ultimately, before I'm done, I'd like to have what would be largely considered the best bank in the country.
Are you a community banker through and through?
Absolutely. There's no way for me to change that. Like if you said to me tomorrow, this $50 billion regional bank over here is offering you their CEO job, your salary is going to go up by 10 times and, great benefits package, this, that, the other thing, I'd turn it down.
It's a lot of money to turn down.
I wouldn't care. So I love this job. I love this business. I love this company, not because of how much money I make. And I do make a lot more than I used to. I like
Right.
it because we make a difference every day,
Right.
to our borrowers, to our depositors, to the people whose assets we manage, to our insurance clients, to the community, to our employees. I mean, we've got 640 families that depend on me to do my job the right way. And I take that as, it's a great badge of honor to be entrusted with that. So I know that the decisions I make today impact businesses, individuals, shareholders, employees, and the community at large a lot.
How do you manage that pressure? So if somebody's listening to this podcast and maybe they've got designs on a future, sort of like a future like yours, and running a large company or a bank, how do you handle it? How do you internally regulate all that pressure that you just talked about?
So it's not like I don't feel pressure.
Sure.
I do, right?
Of course.
But not like most people do.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I do things physically, like, with the weightlifting or the hiking
Right.
or running or whatever, to balance out my personality. But I love that pressure. I love that intensity.
thrive
I
on
feed
it.
off of it. I do.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of that during the PPP process. I mean, that was a crazy amount of energy that this company, not just me, but this
Right.
company put into that PPP thing. And Dave, we did better than any bank in the country.
Let me just say this for your listeners at home. I didn't even bank with Mid-Penn Bank, and I apologize for not banking with Mid-Penn Bank. And my bank did not reach out to me for my PR firm, La Torre Communications, with regards to PPP during the lockdown. And you made a point of texting me going, you guys need help. You
Right.
guys want our help. We're here to help. And you helped us through the PPP process, which was very important for us at that time when people really couldn't do anything. And then I said, how could I not bank with this guy? I mean, how could I not do it after you were thinking about 1,000 things, probably more during a pandemic. I mean, all of a sudden it gets dropped in your lap and you took the time to think of me, and I'll never forget that. And I'll always, that's why I'm always like, whenever you come up in a conversation, I always go to bat for you. Because I think some people see a guy who is really, like I say, intense and focused. And if they don't know you, they don't know the story.
Absolutely.
That's why this story is important to tell. And if I could leave people with anything out there, like I don't run a big business. I have 2 employees, 2 full-time employees. You could have spent your time on anybody, and you made a point of reaching out to seeing if we needed your help. There was nothing in it for you.
Right.
Zero. So I think, and I know you don't talk about those things, and I know you don't like to talk about those things, but I think people need to understand behind the vision and the growth models is, I think, that same guy who grew up in a working class family who has never forgotten his roots.
Absolutely not.
And I think that's important.
Yeah. And, so I'm not like the normal person that, gets consumed with stress or anxiety.
Right.
And by the way, I'm not saying that I was always that way.
Sure.
When I first got into banking, I had tons of anxiety, because I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
Today, we have these things called individual development plans with every employee. And that plan is created between the employee, their supervisor, and one of our development officers.
Gotcha.
And, the essence of the plan is, what do you want to do? What do you need to do educationally now to help you be better at your job? And what are your long-term objectives? What do you want to be, in banking? And I remember when I first started talking about these like 13, 14 years ago, people were like, well, what if they say they want to be the CEO?
So what?
Great.
Great. Yeah.
Great. If they say they want to be the CEO of the company, then tell them my story and tell them all the things tell them that I worked, 70 hours a week for the first, 15 years out of college. Tell them that I did an MBA at night on top of that. Tell them that I did a law degree at night on top of that. Tell them that, I made all these things and all these decisions and I did all these things the right way. And if they want to follow that type of path, they can do it too. You can't just say, I want to be the CEO and like magically make me the CEO. If you want to put in the time to do it, anyone can do it. If I could do it, anyone can do it.
You're also a great family man.
Love
And
it.
listen, I'm not paid to be here. I wanted to do this interview with you. I wanted to do a deep dive with you. People need to understand that you're a great dad, great husband. How do you make that time? Like, how do you figure all that out? I think that's important for people to understand.
Yeah. So I never wanted to be that guy that, at the end of his life was saying, boy, I wish I spent more time with my family. So,
right.
I coached my kids in everything.
Did you really?
I coached basketball. I coached track. cross country, soccer. I didn't even know what I was doing in soccer. I went out and
Most soccer coaches don't, for the record. But
My oldest daughter played one season of soccer.
Right.
And at the end of the season, I said, "Are you going to play again next year?" And she said, "If you coach." And I said, "Well, honey, you got to coach."
It's pretty neat.
So she said, "Well, see if you can be an assistant coach." So I went up and asked a lady, you probably know her, Ann Mermelstein.
Sure.
Camp Hill woman.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, "Hey, Ann, you need an assistant coach." So I became her assistant coach for a season. And then because she just had a baby.
Right.
So she stopped coaching. I took over. I ended up coaching soccer for 6 years.
That's crazy.
I had to go out and get the Soccer for Dummies book.
Figure it all out.
I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
But as it turns out, it was motivating, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids on how to play soccer is no different than motivating people on how to do banking. And so
so many life lessons for you along the way.
Right. So I always wanted to make sure I got at home for as many family dinners as I could. I wanted to put my kids to bed at night. I wanted to tell them stories, and my daughters will tell you that I told them legendary stories.
Oh, I'm sure.
Legendary stories every night. And I wanted to be there for them when they got into whatever activities they were going to do.
Right.
So my youngest really wasn't in the sports, but she was in the musical theater, and I never missed any of her shows. And because I remember how important it was to me when I would, freshman football at McDevitt, when you play those games.
Big deal.
7:30 Saturday morning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And man, my dad would, and I never even sniffed the grass.
Right. I hear you.
Like I was the guy on the sideline until 30 seconds left in the game. Retrieve, get in there.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was my dad every game at 7:30 on a Saturday morning, sometimes in his Greyhound, uniform, getting ready to go to work. Right. And I remember thinking how special that was. So when I said, if my kids get into something, I'm going to be there for them.
I mean, I see your relationships. I've met your daughters now at different events or at Eagles games. And have you gotten to the point now? I always said to my son, now that he's out in the world, like, I'm no longer your dad. I'm your buddy. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm your friend. If you want me to be dad and you need me to be dad, I will be. But for now, right now, we're buddies, which I always look forward to. Have you sort of progressed in that relationship with them, or are you still dad?
No, I don't think that I'm, doing the dad stuff much these days.
Right.
I think it's more, I really enjoy the heck out of my time with each one of my daughters.
It's obvious.
And, sometimes when it's just two of us,
right.
Sometimes when it's our whole family, like we have a lot of fun as a family. Sometimes when you have 3 daughters, you mix them up.
Yeah.
It gets a little crazy, but I enjoy, they're my absolute best friends. Like there's no one I'd rather be with than either my wife or one of my daughters.
Even when they were teenagers, because my 13-year-old's driving me crazy. Do you have any advice for me? Does it get any better? Like
get them into sports and coach them.
That's right.
And then you're like, if so you can yell at that kid.
Yeah, that's right.
I never yelled at any other player that I ever coached. I coached dozens of kids between basketball and soccer and track. And now I see these kids, like I'll go down to the Cornerstone Coffee House and some 23, 24-year-old, mostly girls,
says hi to you, right?
Will come over and say hi to me. I just saw it when I was down at WHTM doing the Good Day PA for November 1st.
Right.
And I'm walking out of the building and this woman's walking the other way and she goes, "You look familiar to me." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "Did you used to coach soccer?" I said,
"That's so great."
I said, "Are you Heather?" And she said, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Heather, it's been 15 years since I've seen you."
How cool is that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's making impacts in your community.
And that's so, I don't think that I was the best husband in the world. I don't think I was the best father in the world. I did my best.
Yeah, you tried your hardest.
I still try to do my best. And, did I make plenty of mistakes? Tons of mistakes. But, it's all about continuing to strive to be better. And you got to redefine those relationships because
for sure.
My daughters don't need a dad anymore. They need a friend, a mentor, someone that can help motivate.
And knowing the difference.
Absolutely.
Knowing the difference. You touched on, and I wanted to circle back on this, on the university. Like if anybody, if you ever come to your headquarters here in Harrisburg, or your offices in Harrisburg, you see a building labeled university. Can you describe what Mid-Penn University is for people who may not have heard of this?
Yeah, so my good friend, the producer of the show, Scott Bosjancic, he's the dean of the university or president of the university. What are we calling you these days?
Director.
Director. And
The
so,
Grand Poobah. That's much better.
every bank has a training department.
Sure.
I said you train animals. You educate humans.
Well said.
And so we wanted to make sure that it got the appropriate level of distinction within the company. And that's why we named it Mid-Penn University. And what Scott does, he helps educate employees based upon those individual development plans.
Sure.
So he helps educate them on banking related subjects or things that aren't necessarily banking related. If we can help you become a better person, a better, cook at home or a better parent or whatever, like I'm all for that, because you can't just say if you want to make it a person the most productive person they could possibly be, right? And that's
the goal.
That's my goal,
Right.
You got to help them with all their life, not just their work life. You got to help them with all their life. So if we can help someone be a better parent or a better sibling or, a better community member and a better banker at the same time, that's when we win.
Yeah, doesn't that help make the bank go at the end of the
Absolutely.
day by having all that buy-in and
Absolutely.
showing people you care?
Right. And it's showing all those employees. And look, this is like a circular thing, right?
Sure.
I go through this with the employees all the time. I'll say, why are we here? And someone will say, to make loans. No. Why are we here? Oh, to do things in the community. No. Why are we here? We're a publicly traded company. Why are we here? And it's sooner or later, someone will say, to provide shareholder return. They'll say, right.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. That's the only reason we're here, to reward our shareholders.
Right.
But how do we do that? We make more money. And how do we do that? We do, more loans and get more deposits and do this. And how do we do that? Because we have employees that do it better than anyone else. And how do we do that? Because we find ways to treat each one of them with, we have it right in our mission statement. We want to cherish all of our employees. We want to put each and every one of those employees, all 638, want to put them in the best position that they can be in life,
Right.
to win. And I remember talking to employees, a long time ago, and I'm saying, do any of you not think that your job is critical? And someone would say, I don't think my job's critical. Yeah, what is? I don't care if your job is to go clean the ATMs in the morning so that they don't have spider webs on them, so that when a customer comes up, they go.
It's professional, right?
So everyone's job here is critical. And if we can get everyone doing that job as best as they can and being a happy person while they're doing it and feel like they're really giving back to the community, David, everything else is easy.
Speaking of easy, and I'm just joking when I say that, it's been a tough couple years with pandemics and economies that are struggling. And I would imagine that community banks are no less challenged by these developments all around us. What do you see today as a big challenge facing the community bank sector, facing Mid-Penn Bank?
Yeah, so I think that the consolidation in the industry is real, right? When I became CEO in February 2009, I think there were 215 banks still headquartered in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And now there might be 100,
Right.
a little over 100.
Right.
And in a few years, I think that there's going to be less than 100. And, sooner or later, it might get down to 25. And so a challenge for us is we got to be one of them, right?
One of the 25.
Yeah. Now, no, we're not going to be able to stay this size. We're going to have to continue to get bigger. And we're going to have to continue to get bigger so that we can make the investments in the company that will allow you to get bigger. But we have to keep that community feel. And so
That's the trick, right?
That's the trick.
Not easy.
It's not easy because there's no real definition of what a community
Sure.
bank is.
Sure.
Community bank when you see it.
Right.
It's
Well
like
said.
Cardozo,
Well said. Yeah.
right? So the essence of being a community bank is when you see all the top people going out and doing things with the employees and in the communities, that's a community bank,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So if anyone's living in an ivory tower, if anyone's making decisions without going out and spending time with the people, and I just gave a speech to the employees last week at our state of the company meeting, and I said, I've studied presidents to get life lessons and get leadership lessons, and from Washington, I learned, don't ask them to do anything you wouldn't do yourself.
Well said.
He was big on that. With Lincoln, it was leadership by walking around. The amount of time that he spent with the troops.
Be available.
Not the generals,
Right.
the troops
Yeah.
during the war, which was that was his whole presidency.
Right.
And so, in November, I go out and I hand an envelope to every employee that has a thank you from the board along with a gift.
Every one of them.
Every one of them. And it takes 6 days to do that.
What's that like?
It's exhausting, but it's the most fun time because I get to see all those people that every day throughout the year do such a great job for the company.
Right.
And, people will say, well, geez, now you're going to buy William Penn Bank. Now you're going to add, another 50, 60, 70 employees. And now it might take 7 days to do that. And then as soon as that's over, we do another tour in December.
Right.
Where we go out, senior team, and we visit every location and we hand out holiday gifts and we spend a little bit of time with the people, have some holiday cheer, so to speak. And hold 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Holiday cheer, so to speak. And, that takes, I think this year it's going to take 11 days.
Right.
And next year it might take 12 days. So people keep saying, how long do you think you're going to continue to do
Yeah,
that?
it's
Like
a great,
the bigger you get,
it's a
how
natural,
long?
it's a
And
natural
I said,
question.
forever. I'll never stop doing that.
Right.
If I get to the point where I say, I don't have time for that, I'll retire.
Time to go.
Absolutely. Time to go.
And I would have to think it's important for your team to see that too. For you to walk up and hand somebody an envelope and say, thank you very much. You don't see that much anymore.
Yeah, I the feedback that I get from them is that it's very important to them. But as I told them last week, honestly, this isn't benevolence. I'm glad you guys get something out of it.
Right.
I'm doing it for me.
Right.
Because I like being with them. I like spending time Dave, we've got, whether it's in Schuylkill County or Luzerne County or out west in Fayette County, Clearfield, down in the southeast area around Philly, here in central Pennsylvania, we got some great people.
You sure do.
And when you walk into one of our financial centers, we don't call them branches, when you walk into one of our financial centers and you see how enthusiastic they are and how they're smiling, and you know that it's not made up. Like you could tell when someone's just putting on a show.
Right.
It's just, it makes you feel like you can do anything.
Real quick, why financial center and not branch?
Because branch sounds like you're not as important as whatever's over here. You're just a branch.
Interesting.
Right? So Commerce Bank used to call them stores. And I'm like, I'm not going to copy them.
Right.
So I said, well, you know what they really are? They're financial centers.
They
Because
really
you can
are.
go there and you get loans, you can get deposits, you can get, wealth advice, brokerage, whatever. So let's call them what they are, financial centers.
What is it like? We've got this sort of digital age going on where everybody does everything online. For you, is it still important to have those financial centers where people can touch and feel something physical in this kind of ever-changing digital world?
Mm-hmm. It is, because like even the closer you get to a metropolitan area, the more technology sophisticated the customers are, the more they expect, right?
Right.
They expect everything to be done electronically on their phone, on their iPad. So we have to provide that technology to them, but they still want to see those retail locations. They want to see those financial centers because makes them feel like that bank actually has a vested interest in that community. Right. So even if it's Bucks County or Montgomery County or Chester County or now over in South Jersey, they want to see physical locations. Doesn't mean you have to have one on every corner, but they want to see physical locations, even if they don't plan on going in there.
Right.
They just know that they can. And then if you get into more suburban or rural areas, man, those financial centers are critical.
That's probably where a lot of people, that's the only route they have for banking is to be able to go into one of those financial centers in rural areas.
Right.
I mean, when you think about Pennsylvania, we still do not have comprehensive broadband coverage across the Commonwealth. So they need your branch.
Absolutely.
I said branch, I'm sorry, financial center. See, it's ingrained sort of in our lexicon that banks have branches. That's what's so unique, I think, about the concept of a financial center.
Yeah. So I have noticed other banks started to call their, I'm not saying they copied us, but I'm not saying they didn't copy us.
Well, I can say that. But yeah.
But so we also don't call those people that you go hand your money to.
Yeah.
We don't call them tellers.
What do you call them?
Financial center associates.
There
Because
you go.
like I never even understood what teller meant.
What is a teller?
Well,
They
I
tell
have
you
no
something?
idea.
Yeah, like where does this stuff come from?
I don't know. I think someone explained it to me a long time ago that did have something to do with something that they would tell you.
Yeah.
That's completely outdated.
We're in the 21st century. I mean, we're a quarter way through the 21st century.
It's
like time to
2025.
update things,
We're
right?
in 2025.
Yeah, right.
You're right.
It's crazy.
We're ending the first quarter.
So, with the last couple minutes we have here, I wanted to ask you really about, we talked about how if you could do it all over again, having that vision at the very beginning instead of just grinding it out day by day. Now that we are going into 2025 and the years you've had here, what can you share with folks watching or listening to this podcast about what is the vision for Mid-Penn Bank moving forward?
Yeah. So, and again, it's not like I say, boy, I wish I can go back and tell that, 47-year-old guy, what vision means, because it wouldn't have meant anything then.
Sure.
Because my vision had to be like really short. But I would have liked to have been able to tell him, just hang in there, man. Just, work your tail off.
Right.
And sooner or later, you'll be in a point where you can look down the road more. So the down the road now, I don't think that there's any lid for this company. I do think that we could become one of the best, considered one of the best banks in the country. And when I say that, not just in, because we're one of the best banks to work for, which we have been on that list nationally, top 20. But I'd like the shareholding community, because a lot of our shareholders, institutional shareholders, they invest in banks all around the country. And I just had one of them tell me that they invest in over 1,000 names, and they only invest in high quality companies, and we're one of their favorites.
That's awesome.
That's what I want. I want shareholders to think that we're one of the best banks in the country, because if they believe that, then we get to stick around and keep making a difference in all the areas that we're in. Right. And keep employing not 638, with 170 when I got here. Now it's 638. Soon it'll be 1,000 and beyond. That's the legacy.
Right.
That's why I could have done other things, Dave. Seriously.
Sure.
I mean,
of course.
I consider myself to be a reasonably intelligent guy with an incredible work ethic and a very positive attitude about life. I could have gone and made a lot of money.
Sure.
Doing other things. But this is what I want to do. This is what I want to build. I'd love to, somewhere around October 7th of 2036, there's going to be a retirement party for me.
Is that what your target is?
That's my target currently.
Yeah. Yeah, you could.
I reserve the right to push it out a couple
No
years.
offense. I don't see you as the retiring type.
No.
I mean,
And by the way, Mrs. Retrievi doesn't see me as a retiring.
She doesn't want you
Last
around.
thing she wants me in that.
She want you around
She don't
all
want
the
this
time.
intensity at home all day, every day.
Yeah, I get it though, because you still, the sense I get is, and I'm fortunate enough to feel that way too. I wake up every day excited about what I do.
Same here.
I want to solve things. I want to create things. I want to put good ideas into the marketplace, things along those lines. And why walk away from that?
And see
Right.
the fruits of your labor.
Right.
Right. Like,
That's what's got to be the biggest thrill
this
of all.
has never been about making money.
Right.
People not that I don't like making money. I do like making
people
money.
don't believe that,
I
but
know
they don't understand. Some folks don't understand that that's the byproduct
Right.
of doing what you love.
Right.
Is you also get to make money doing it.
Look, I never, ever, ever in my wildest dreams ever thought that I'd be making as much money as I am making today.
Right.
Right. And I know that I can make more.
Right.
I don't care about that because, all right, so make the money. Then what? Will you sit around and count it the rest of your life? What I want is when I do retire, if it's October 7th of 2036 or at some point later than that, I'd like to get my gold watch.
Right.
And I'm going to start writing a book about my time in Mid-Penn Bank.
It's a great story.
I think it's going to be a great story. I think it's going to be a story worth writing about. And, if I spend my last, I don't know, I mean, at that point, I'll be 73. I don't know. If I get another 20 years, I'd be really happy. If I spend that time writing that book that maybe inspires someone else, that'll be
Something tells me you wouldn't hire a ghostwriter either. Like,
no.
You're not that type of guy. Like, you want to dig right in and get there.
I might get Jen Trotling, who she might help me write.
She's a great writer.
Yeah,
She's a great writer.
Or Cindy
for sure.
Wetzel, our corporate secretary who retired a couple of years ago. She was a great writer. She was one of the only people that I ever met that could edit me.
Right.
And say, no, I think you want to say it this way, not that way. So maybe Cindy and Jen and I will.
It's always good to have somebody help as long as you're the one that's really kind of commandeering the words.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's it. And for all the work you've done and all the time you've put into this, I've got to think there's at least, 20 or 30 good chapters
Oh
in
my
there.
gosh, you got a chapter of PPP. You've got a
Right.
chapter about the Great Recession. You've got a chapter about what we're going through right now, and the yield, the inverted yield curve. There's just a lot of things to write about.
Real quick, and I almost forgot about this, and something I did want to ask you before we wrap up is we've got a new administration coming in Washington. Donald Trump reelected to a second term. First time in, I think, well over a century where we will have 3 consecutive single-term presidencies.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there were certainly some challenges during the Biden years. Is it too early to kind of say where things are headed under Trump? Do you have any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I, like most people, really want to see, he talks about the tariffs.
Right.
I want to see how that's going to work because if they're not done the right way, it could be devastating.
Sure.
I want to see government spending pulled back.
Right.
And I want to see us get closer to a balanced budget. I mean, Dave, we got too much debt.
It's crazy.
It's
Crazy.
I remember, I think when President Obama left, I think we had 16 trillion of debt.
Right.
Somewhere around there. Now we have 36 trillion.
It took us all those years to get to 16, and
Right.
then we doubled it in 16 years.
And the last president that had a balanced budget was
Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a long time ago.
Way too long ago.
Way too long ago. So we've got to figure out a way to stimulate the economy.
Right.
And you can't, anyone thinks all we got to do is tax people more. That doesn't work.
Right.
We've got to be smarter with the way that we spend money. I think that the fiscal and monetary policy of this country for quite some time has been bad.
Right.
And it needs to be improved. And I'm hoping that President Trump can, be the leader in that. So we'll see. There's the theoretical Trump bump that we got in 2016 because he's an anti-regulation guy, and
Sure.
a lot of people think that regulation in banking is too much already.
Right.
And so, if anyone thinks that he pulls some of that regulation back, that should make banks more money, and that's why you get the Trump bump. But I'm less concerned about that than I am about, I just want a strong economy.
Right.
Where, people get real wage growth.
Right.
And we control inflation, and we have moderate interest rates, not the 0% interest rates, but certainly not the interest rates that we have now.
Right.
And so that, we can get back to, not having deficits and having the economy grow 2 to 3% a year. If we can do all that, and I don't care who the president is,
Right.
if they can deliver that, I'll be their biggest fan.
Sounds like a great plan. Sounds like, maybe you ought to reach out to them and let them know. I mean, they probably benefit from hearing your story and your vision, I would think, at a national level. It wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, well, I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, you're pretty busy.
Dave, this is fantastic.
Hey, listen, I want to thank you. When we talked about this, you brought up, hey, could you come in and sit in with me again? Like, the answer is always yes and when. And I clear my schedule, and I love to do it. I love to have the conversations. This is really the new form of media and journalism, the long form interview conversation. So thank you for providing the opportunity, and thanks for communicating so openly and transparently with the Mid-Penn Bank community.
Well, I don't think I could have asked anyone better than you to come in and do this with me.
Very kind of you.
There's this guy, John La Torre, who's out there. I don't know if you know
Right,
John La Torre.
yeah.
He saw the last podcast when we said that you were coming in to do this.
Right.
And he sent me a text. He said, why don't you have me come in and do this?
John would be good.
Sorry, man. John
would be good.
Because he knows, a little bit,
Sure does.
He knows the questions to ask about when he knew me when I was 10.
Right.
But, Dave, you did a great job. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Congratulations on all the success and continued for many, many years. I don't want to hear anything about retiring.
You got it. All right. And I'm going to come on your show sometime soon.
You better believe it.
Right.
We'll figure this out. I'd like to have it really soon if possible. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Love you, man.
Great to love you too, pal. Good to talk to you.
Scott, we'll be back in a couple weeks.
New
episode. With the maybe more improvements to the studio. We're still working on it. And, this is, I think the studio's looking good.
Fantastic.
But it'll get better.
Absolutely. Always make it better.
All right, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Mid-Penn Bank podcast. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. The podcast can be found at Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever you find great podcasts. If you have any feedback or questions, email us at podcast@midpennbank.com. References in this podcast to Mid-Penn are to Mid-Penn Bancorp, Inc. and its subsidiaries and affiliates. This podcast expresses the views of its participants and may not represent the views of Mid-Penn or its officers and employees. In addition, these views are subject to change without notice, and Mid-Penn has no duty or obligation to update the information contained in this podcast. This podcast is being made available for informational purposes only and should not be used for any other purposes. You are encouraged to consult with competent legal, tax, accounting, or investment professionals before engaging in any financial transaction. Mid-Penn does not make any warranties as to the accuracy or completeness of the information in this podcast, does not endorse any third-party companies, products, or services, and assumes no liability for your use of this information. Forward-looking statements should not be considered guarantees or predictions of future events. This podcast is the sole property of Mid-Penn and may not be copied, reproduced, republished, or posted in whole or in part in any form without prior written consent of Mid-Penn.